Welcome to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge, the podcast where Christine says fear, questions everything, and takes bold action. Christine Spratley is a former professional boxer, nanny, and 29-plus year corporate warrior turned founder of HBIC Advisors, where she is a public speaker and coach. She's been saying fear her whole life, many times without even realizing it. So tune in, spread the word, and get ready, because this isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell.
Welcome to Fuck Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head bitch in charge. And we are going to do our shots today. All right, hold on. I got to open the Dr. Feelgood. And again, I maybe do the longevity one. No, I'm kidding. The immunity one, Chaser, just because it's so good. All right, this is the one that tastes kind of like Jack Daniel's going down. Well, it doesn't taste like it, but it has the burn like it. You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Oh,
that was spicier today.
That was really good shit. Oh.
Wow.
They have one that's just has ginger in it. Like straight ginger. Oh my God. Ooh, that'll grow some hair in your chest. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Whew. Man, I just want to do the immunity because it tastes so good now. Okay. So today we are on the V in love. L-U-V-E.
Sounded like a euphemism. We're on the V.
The V. And the V is for validation. And validation is action-oriented acceptance. That's what I figured out for me, Joe. That's what, because I was trying to think of, okay, well, what are we doing here? You know, what the hell is the reason why we're having to validate, or we don't have to do anything, but I'm choosing to validate and show this. Because if you remember, excuse me, it's still burning.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Action-oriented validation versus
okay.
regular.
So
or acceptance, sorry.
Action-oriented acceptance. So in the U, we did understanding, right? Mm-hmm. We stepped into their logic. And this is something we do kind of mentally. We go, okay, how the hell did you get there? Oh, okay, this is your background, this is your history, this is the way that it has worked for you in the past. These are your belief systems. Okay, now I understand why 2 + 2 = 6 for you. Like, I get it. I get that. Validation, though, and we're going to go through different kind of moves in practice. But validation in action-oriented acceptance is, first of all, acceptance means, to me anyway, is this is the way it is. This is the reality. This is the situation. It isn't right or wrong. It is just, it's literally acknowledging reality as it is. And in the other person, it's, acceptance is their emotion, their viewpoint, without resisting, without recusing, without even resigning. And it's not only acknowledging and accepting theirs, but ours. And so to me, when I say validation is action-oriented acceptance, it is going from stepping into their logic to then coming out and verbally or in other ways, physically conveying that you see their reality as is, their emotion or their viewpoint as is. And I like that because for a long time I couldn't do acceptance, because acceptance to me meant that, well, I just was a passive person along this journey. And some things I would be like, well, no, that is not acceptable. And if it's not acceptable, then I change my reality and I remove myself from the situation. But so validation in this is I am giving to that other person or to myself. Again, we can take this either with ourselves in our relationship and how we talk to ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we view ourselves, or with another person as, okay, this is the way it is for them right now. This is their emotion. This is their viewpoint. And because I understand how they got there based on who they are and the tools that they have or the experiences that they have, okay, I'm going to tell them, yeah, I get it. I see that. I see that in you. And why this matters, and I took this from two different standpoints because sometimes obviously we all have personal interaction. And when I mean personal, I mean outside of work. But then I also thought it was interesting because I've been doing a lot of reading lately. I'm almost done with the book, Crucial Conversations, which is I'm going to follow this series up with a series on that because it's an amazing book. Actually, my therapist asked me to read it. My counselor asked me to read it. She said, "You may well like this book."
I think my therapist asked me to read it too.
Yeah,
recommended by therapists everywhere.
But it's funny because it's on business. A lot of it is business, and it just again, I'm one of these firm believers that you take who you are into business. And if you can have a crucial conversation in business, it's because you're having them at home. So anyway, I digress. But so why this matters in the personal aspect, for me, when I'm doing this and I am validating a person's experience, how they've experienced the situation, whether that be how they've experienced it from an emotional standpoint, or how they've experienced it from the way they view this particular set of values or something like that. But basically, it allows me to switch off the threat mode. And and again, we talked about this in the very first episode. Validating literally lowers the heart rate and the cortisol during a conflict levels in a person's body. That's like happens. And so immediately you are de-escalating a situation. You are opening up for more constructive comments and critiques and navigations and just dialogue on a personal level. The other thing that I think is really important is you're filling the emotional bank account. And by that, it's you do basically you're filling that in where they're seeing this as I'm having a positive experience, and the positive experiences that I get from you, of you seeing who I am, of you validating who I am, that means that it is full. Like I can trust this. I can trust that when I come to you, I'm not going to have to defend my emotions. I'm not going to have to, you're going to go, oh yeah, I get this. I see that. I see that. I see how you can feel that way. I get that. Yeah, I guess I'd be angry too. And I'm not saying I'd be angry because I believe that that's the right thing to do or whatever. It's just given your situation and who you are. Yeah, I get that. And then also, it gives the burnout buffer. And this is from Brene Brown, and just the unresolved threat, the chronic stress cycle. And validation kind of closes that. It kind of says, okay, there's no longer a threat here, and we're closing it, and yes, we can move on. Now in business, I thought this was really good because again, I'm reading the Crucial Conversations, Make It Safe First, which is in there. You get out of that fight or flight mode. So again, people are learning that they can say what they need. Say, hey, I had this error. Or I saw, how many times you've been in with a partner. And I always say partner because PPMDs in my old world were kind of the hierarchy. And there was the C-suites and then the executives and then the PPMDs. and then everybody else. But you see somebody making a mistake, or you see something happening, and it's like, if you don't say something, if you don't feel comfortable saying something, so validation is the ability for someone kind of in a hierarchical upper ling being able to go down and say, oh yeah, I can see how you see that point of view. I can see how you get there. It also, when you're managing and you're managing teams, it also allows them to be safe to be able to come up and say, yeah, I think you're crazy. But you can go, oh, okay, well, again, I'm validating. Yeah, I get how you see that. I'm not just putting it down. And then again, I think Google has this, and it's interesting because they've got this in their theory, but safety beats talent, pay, and IQ is kind of their deal, and how they go and allow people to say what they need to say about and criticize or say, hey, I found the fly in the ointment. And then just the psychological safety, and this is Edmondson from MIT and the / Harvard study, the field study about higher learning and performance. And again, the higher psychological safety people feel, and this is what validation helps create, is, again, it's not, when I say this, I want to be clear. Validation is not saying you are right. It is not acquiescing my stance or perspective. It is just saying your perspective is valid. Like, yeah, it's yours. It's what you have. It's the sum of what you came out of that situation or what you're bringing to the situation. And so I think it's really important when I have personal and professional kind of what's at stake. And then without it, people are always stuck in that chronic fight or flight mode, and we've seen this I've seen this in different books that I've read, and stats and figures, especially for women. When I don't feel validated and I go into silence, or I don't say anything, and I'm in that fight or flight mode, the body starts taking a toll. And the body starts just wreaking havoc because that energy has nowhere else to go but inward. And it just sort of fests and fights on itself. Again, the emotional silencing that we take in from not validating. So one of the things that I was thinking back to is our conversation, Joe, about, and when someone's explaining a situation, you're like, well, there's, and you come at it from a technical aspect. And it's like, well, is that really the point here? And I think for me, in all of this love and, LUV and even the crucial conversations that I'm learning more and more about, is what is really the point? And am I dealing with someone I actually care about, even if it's just a little bit, like a colleague, just, oh yeah, I care about them. Okay, well then wouldn't I want there to be a good environment for them, even if I think they're dead ass wrong? Wouldn't I want them to be in an environment where they can have a better emotional bank account, a higher sense of psychological safety, so that they are not in that fight or flight mode, so that they can, because if I'm in a fight or flight mode, I don't pivot. I am too busy defending, to pivot. And so again, it's the psychological cost, but it's also the physiological cost that we have. And then the problem stays the same. The physical problems are just crazy. I mean, think about, and we've had some conversations about your time as, doing corporate and my time, and, just how much I had migraines. There were times when I would go, there was a stint for about 1.5 years where I had like a migraine at least twice a week, where it would take me the F out, And just it just literally my body would just go through all this stuff. So what's the point of the conversation? What's the point of the dialogue?
Yeah, it reminds me of this. I mean, you hear it a lot in relationship counseling kind of stuff. You can be right or you can have a relationship. And that kind of, I think, sums up the idea of like the know-it-all who wants it to be technically correct. And it's like, oh, is that really the point of what we're doing?
Yeah.
Like to be technically correct? Or is it to have a friend or a relationship or a healthy dialogue with somebody?
And I'll share this. I remember my ex and I, he used to be a caddy at Muirfield when he was younger. And so he knew a lot about golf, and he was good at it. He could see it. I mean, he knew what the hell was going on. And I had come from, when we first started dating, I had come from Dallas, and Jimmy was my golf instructor. And I'm not good. I know I'm not good. I was so bad when I first started that I gave it up, and then I went and saw Jimmy. And but what was interesting was every time my ex and I would go golf, I would get these lessons. And he would always say to me, well, why are you so resistant? And there were a couple things. And again, it wasn't, would you rather be right or would you rather have a relationship? But it was literally like, I don't see you doing it with any of your guy buds out there. Like, he is not telling Kenny how to frickin' line up his drive. Like, he is not telling him, like, they may help him read a putt or something, but he's not getting behind him. And so I knew that going in. It was that whole thing where we kind of talked about in the you of going in and saying, well, I need to tell you how it is, because if I don't, then I have no value. I need to control the situation. I need to tell you, or I need to save you. But either way, I am kind of validating you. And so it was interesting because I would literally and I couldn't explain to him. I couldn't explain to him why it just bothered me so much. But it is one of those things where it's like, well, what's the point here? And he'd always say, well, don't you want to learn, be better? And I'm like, no, I just want to go have fucking fun. I take like eight freaking sleeves of balls so I can lose them and I don't have to find them. Like, I know I suck. Like, I just, but again, for me, it's that what's the point here? And the point of validation is giving you the verbal, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but the moves of way you can practice validation, the outward showing of acceptance of where they're at, not where I'm at, but where they're at in that moment. And what's funny is that another thing that we talked about the other day was, that's the point. It's not, the point isn't to resolve or come up with, we haven't moved that part of the discussion yet.
Yeah.
We're just dealing with their experience of the discussion, which I think is also I had to kind of process, because I was like, well, if we're always just listening, then when the hell do I get to be my side of the story? And when do we actually get to resolve shit? But this is a part of laying the foundation to resolve things in the future, to continue on the discussion. And so some of the ways that you can practice this, and dialectical behavior therapy, this came out in the 1990s, but there's 6 practical validation moves of that. And this is used in VA hospitals to, Fortune 100 coaching. But there's 6 moves. 1, be present, undivided attention. You can validate someone by showing them physically that you're present. That means not on your phone. That means not, to me, one of the biggest things is eye contact. And I don't know if you've ever, it'll be interesting with women, if you, I would love to hear your thoughts on this for my women listeners, but if you've ever been talking with somebody, a partner, and you get the sense that they're done listening. They're done. And they're doing it they're still laying right next to you or sitting next to you, but they're looking around. They're looking at their watch, they're looking at the TV. You know, they're done. It's not that present, that undivided attention. And that undercuts validation. So accurate reflection, paraphrase. Everybody that's had any sort of counseling, couples counseling, understands that mode. You know, I hear you. You know, if I hear you saying, you know, this is what I hear. And then read the emotions. Speak what the unspoken feeling. Hey, are you angry? It's, you know, I hear that you're angry. Is that right? And then ask for the comment, you know, but put it out there. Name it. Understand causes. Link feelings to triggers in history. Again, this kind of goes back. And if I'm not listening and I'm not understanding and stepping into their logic, there's no way I can link the feeling to the trigger or the history, because I haven't stepped into and given them the consideration. Okay. And then I normalize that. Anyone in that spot would feel that way. And in that spot means with their history, with the tools that they have, the ability to access them, I get it. Anyone would do that. And then the sixth one is called radical genuineness. I'd probably feel the same way. And again, this is really hard. And that's like, moments where you're like, okay, all my defenses are down and I don't need to defend any of my points of view. But yeah, I'd probably feel the same way. Again, given that person's situation, history, and tools and wisdom that they have to that point. I don't know. I just thought those are ways to put that in practice. And I think why this fits for the validate is that in the love and how it fits is when you are going from a listen where you're capturing the data, you're understanding, you're building that mental map, and then you go into that acceptance of their reality, but it's going to be you speak that map back to them. Think of how far that conversation has taken place. You haven't even you haven't come at them. You've just basically said, this is where you're at. Like, you've heard them. And I think that is one of the, for me, hardest things to do when I'm in a conversation or when I'm in a flight or fight mode. And that tells me a lot about the relationships that I have. If I feel defensive, it's really hard for me to love. If I'm always defensive. And again, sometimes that can be triggers from the past that I'm re-experiencing in the relationship that I have. But I may do 1 and 2. I may listen. I may capture that data and nod or say, tell me more, and give, my presence there. I may understand them where I'm cognitively aligned. But if I am in a defensive relationship or a relationship that doesn't feel safe, and I don't mean just physically safe, I mean all of that other stuff. It is extremely hard for me to verbally convey validation of your point of view, because typically I view that as it's a me or them. Because again, all this other stuff I'm doing here, I'm doing internally, but when I actually sit there and tell you, I can see how you feel that way. I'm trusting that other person goes, okay, that's how I feel that way, and may give that back to me. But if I don't trust that other person, I don't know. Maybe I'll just keep that little nugget to myself. Because you may take that as, well, that means you're right. because you damn sure ain't right. And again, I look at the last part of my, relationship with my ex, and it got to a point where it literally was like, I told him, I said, listen, you think I'm full of shit. I think you're full of shit. We ain't given. No matter, we are just not given. So we need an umpire in here. I don't care. It could be a priest. It could be a counselor. It could be a friend that we both mutually trust, but we're not there, because that's what it leads to, is this point of, I am no longer willing to voice what you need, which is validation that where you're at is the reality. Because I see even voicing it as a threat. And it's just something that, again, I'm learning this in crucial conversation. The more lag time you have between addressing something like this, the harder it becomes and the more buildup. It's harder, when they go in there and they scrape your teeth. If you don't do it and you don't take care of it on a regular basis and brush your teeth and floss and go to your dentist, they can spend a lot of time in there and it can suck. But again, validation is about action-oriented acceptance of their reality to them, speaking the map back to them. It isn't concession. It's the ramp on to sometimes persuasion, but definitely problem solving.
From a farm kid to college, nanny to pro boxer to boardrooms, Christine Spratley has lived a life that defies convention. Whether she's talking about fuck fear, doing this scared is still doing it, or beating the boys club, their game, our rules, your style. She delivers sharp wit, real talk, and a fearless approach to leadership, success, and personal growth. After hearing Christine, your audience will have a plan and unapologetically run until apprehended toward their fulfillment. Book her now at christinespratley.com.
I don't know, Joe. What do you think of that? Because I know you're very technical in that regard, but I think doing it like that sounds to me like almost a technical framework. It's just, again, are you solving the right challenge, or
Yeah, I mean, thinking back all the way to listen, you just think about whatever situation you find yourself in. I take it was you playing husband or golf with your ex. If you skip that first step, I think that's what came to mind. If you skip that first step, you're never going to get here because you were playing to have fun and he was thinking he was helping by correcting your lack of technical progress as a golfer. Like you were training to join the golf league there, and that's not at all what was happening. So, I think that's what I keep thinking about. Like how many times I'm solving the wrong problem. And then I don't know if these were intentionally put in this order, but it seems like they are. Because if you skip that first one, you're screwed.
They're all built, to me, on the other one, because again, I'm getting data. Well, what data am I getting for what problem? And then two, if I am sitting here going, okay, I'm trying to understand it. Well, if you're looking at it from just a pure, okay, she wants to get better and just not out here to have fun and spend time with me and share this time with me and we can laugh and joke and blah, 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 then again, I'm understanding it differently. I'm reading the room differently. And I'm sure as hell not going to validate, I can't validate that because I don't have the first two.
Yeah. I think another thing that I was thinking was how difficult validation is for us where we are as a society, because I think our misunderstanding with acceptance. Anytime you hear anybody talk about acceptance, they always got to say, that doesn't mean you agree with them. And I wonder when we lost that, like when that was common sense and it didn't need a qualifier.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's just where we are. We can't possibly accept somebody without sharing our vast knowledge about how we might have a better understanding of whatever topic we're talking about with the person.
I think it's so amazing because that's one of the reasons why I started doing this probably about 3.5 years ago. and I've done it throughout my life, but really 3.5 years ago. And now I do it a ton when I write my speeches and I go speak. And that is, I look up the actual definition of words and where the hell they come from. Like I do. I go to the Oxford Dictionary and I look up and I go, okay. And I don't assume that I know the actual definition of the word. It's like playing telephone. For those of you that don't know what telephone is, it is when back in the day, we didn't have anything except our imagination. One person, you'd have a group of friends, and you'd all be sitting in a circle or somewhere, and one person would whisper something into the ear of another person. And like 5 people later or 6 people later, whatever, the person at the end would say, "This is what you said." And it would have all of this different, like you're like, what the hell? How did that get there? But again, it's like we've taken things and we, again, passed on from generation to generation, or communication, or I just read the cliff notes of somebody else's opinion, and that's how I've gotten this word acceptance. And to me, part of it for me was what acceptance meant in our family. That's where my definition came from, was because I grew up in a really messed up family. So acceptance meant shut up. We're not going to talk about this. And we're just like, you better just go along. Like that's what acceptance meant. And so it was really great for me when I learned that it just means it's reality. Like it just means that's their reality.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome when I can do that with myself, not just with other people, but just with myself. Because if I'm not accepting my reality, again, if I'm not listening and I'm not checking out the right challenge, what is the true challenge? And if I'm not trying to understand my logic and and I'm not stepping into that and I'm fighting it, or I'm just giving my advice monster, then I don't validate myself and I don't accept that. And again, if I can't accept that, if I can't do that, I'm not dealing with reality. So what the hell's going to change?
Yeah. I think also the idea of how healthy it is versus the opposite approach of saying, I might not agree with you, but I still value you, and having somebody feel that way more than just saying that, because that even sounded sarcastic the way I was saying it. But it made me think of a quote, like it's an old theologian, Leonard Ravenhill, I've got a background being a pastor, but a man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I don't think he was saying that in the terms of like an apologetic, like trying to convince people or proselytize people. Mm-hmm. I think it was more like just that's the way it is. Like you're never going to argue somebody out of their experience, which I think why it's so important when you're having a conversation and validating to start by saying things like, you can disagree with them, but you can say like, in my experience, without saying like, your experience is wrong, dummy. Mm-hmm. There's gentle ways. Gentle's the wrong word. There's healthier ways,
constructive ways,
validating ways to disagree with people versus the normal, what feels like normal in our society right now is, oh, you're wrong. Or,
well, again, it's that whole, we talked about this in, I think it was maybe the first episode where we kind of talked about the political perspectives. And and we got some shit going on. And just that whole thing of how do you sit across, because I've had these conversations, and how do you sit across from people when you're like, oh my gosh, no. And it's really hard, but if I sit there and I go, okay, this is where they're coming from, and I go and I look at what is the real challenge that they're having? What is the real issue that they're having? I had a friend yesterday, we were talking, and I said, I don't know why this came out of my mouth. We were talking about the president. And I said, yeah, we got a 60-year-old man being 60 as president, or a 60-year-old man being 6, as president. And it's just like, okay, that's the real issue. Please go to therapy. But and not just that, but there's a lot of people, that I think that about, but it's, and probably me included at times, but it's like, again, if I don't approach this from what is the real challenge for them here, and what is their challenge, and then how do I listen? How do I get that data? And how do I see it from their logic? And then how do I go, okay, because if I don't validate them, they are going to be in that fight or flight response. I am going to be in that fight or flight response. I'm going to take you to the freaking mat. And I'll tell you, this happened. This is when I knew it was time for me to move on from my relationship, from my ex. But I'll never forget this. This was a day we went, we were going to lunch, and I didn't want to go to lunch. I used to go pick him up at lunch, and we'd go to lunch. And I told a friend of mine, I said, I don't want to do this. I want to go to lunch. I don't want to sit across from the table from this person, let alone go act like we like each other. Like, I don't, it's just, what's the point? So we went to lunch, and we came back, and I was getting ready to drop him off, and he said something and was making a point about something. And I was like, God, that's so, like, I just didn't understand what this, I had missed. There was something missing underneath the floor mat of my car. And and he just wouldn't let it go. And I was like, okay, what's the point? Like, no, like, I don't care. Like, it's a 10-year-old car. I'm going to run it. It's got 110,000 miles on it. I'm going to run it till it's 130, and it drives, and it just round and round and round. And finally, and this is what happened. And this is where there was no love. There was no validation. There was no, like, I didn't understand. I didn't understand the issue. I didn't understand anything. I wasn't listening. I was listening definitely to respond. I was not seeing where his logic was coming from, and there was no way in hell I was going to validate anything. But what happened, so I'm sitting here, and this is where it turns. I literally flipped on my debate, negotiating, corporate mode, where I was like, I'm going to take you down. And I'm going to logically take you down in everything that you say. Now, I didn't verbally tell him he was a dumbass or anything like that. I didn't go out, but I literally was like, I have this mode in me when I get into a kind of a mean, hostile negotiation where it's like I get real fine-tuned, and I'm like picking apart everything from a logic perspective. And it has nothing to do with meeting them at where they're at. It is everything to do with, I'm going to make you feel as small as possible from a logical standpoint, blah, 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 blah. And that immediately, he got out of the car, slammed the door, got out of the car, and I got to the light, and I just broke down because I had done that to somebody that I professed that I loved. And I immediately was like, I've got to remove myself from the situation. If I want to love and cherish this person, the only option to do that is to not be in the same house with this person. I just can't do it. But I say that because that is this disconnect from another person that I feel like in a lot of ways our society has gotten to, where it's, I'm just going to take you down. My point of view, my whatever, I'm just going to take you down. Whether it be based on logic, whether it be just on insults, whether it's, whatever it is, my goal is to take you down. And the reason why I get like that, or the reason is I feel so threatened that it's like I'm struggling for my own air. And that's that is fight or flight mode, and I'll be damned, I'm going down swinging. I don't know. It's that's not my finest moment as a person, but it was something that I immediately went, oh yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. No. And I knew I had to change. I had to change things. But again, when we're talking about validation, and I get to a point where I am not willing to validate somebody else's reality? Why? Why? Doesn't mean they're right, they're wrong. Like, no, that's just their reality at that particular moment. And it's like, what's that about, Christine?
Yeah, I think one of the things that complicates it when you're talking about somebody that you know really well, like a spouse or a partner, is that we don't just argue with them. We're arguing our entire history.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When we have a conversation. And so there's always the element of like, oh, we're not actually talking about the thing, like the context and the actual text of the conversation are two different things.
I would even say that that's every argument, whether it be, and I'll do it from both a physiological and a psychological. Going back to your comment about experience, everybody brings their experience.
Sure.
So not only are you typically arguing that history with that one person, but you're arguing the past shit that you didn't work through or that you didn't bring up and that you haven't, and they are too. And then in business, we're arguing the past stuff or the past 5 times. And again, going to crucial conversations, and we'll talk more about this later, but the whole fact of the first time you hear it, you're like, oh, maybe there's just an oversight. Ooh, the second time, oh yeah, they were definitely mansplaining. Like, and this lag goes on, and then like the 5th time, you're like, ooh, that mother, that's exactly what he's doing. That son of a, and again, by then you are arguing this whole history along with everything else. And I think one of the great things about putting this in your pantry is it gets me to slow down and go, maybe the conversation I thought I had really wasn't the conversation I had. Maybe my challenge is not really the challenge I think I had. Maybe my thought about not wanting to validate this person and make verbal their reality is not so much about them and their shit, but about me and my shit. And about how I feel insecure. And, again, going back to that advice monster, if that's my real challenge is how I feel insecure, that has nothing to do with that person's reality. Because it has everything to do with, okay, well then what do I want to do? And what am I willing to do to make me feel less insecure? And that typically doesn't have a whole lot to do with me validating their reality. It has a lot to do with me. So again, I don't know. I think that when I go and I am less defensive and more open and show my humanity, because when I'm more open, less defensive, show my humanity, I am actually stronger than when I am on the defense. And the best thing that I can think of is and you've heard me say this before, when I used to box, I used to hold my breath. And I never knew I was doing that. I would hold my breath. And I'd come back and Richard would be like, he'd be like, breathe, girl, breathe. Don't breathe through your mouth either. Breathe through your nose, but breathe. And that's what it's like when I'm holding this in and I'm not listening and I'm not showing that understanding and I'm refusing to get into your logic and to step into that and to give you that presence, and I'm refusing to validate. It's because I'm not breathing. I'm refusing what is reality, their reality. And then I don't have the ability for me to pivot and to change perspectives. But I certainly don't have, I don't give them the ability. I mean, and I love sports, but one of the guys that just drives me is Stephen A. Oh, just that whole crass, I mean, just don't, I don't like it. This sounds so bad. I miss Tim Russert and just those kind of conversations and just, again, it's just the whole conversation to learn. And when I'm like that, they soften. Now I can negotiate. Now we can have pivot. Now we can have the dialogue. And again, going back to the first episode with Wooden, listen if you want to be heard. And, if I want to love and be loved, then I need to love. And if I want things to change, then I need to, I need to start seeing that. And I'm not saying that, no, you never bring a hammer. No, sometimes you bring a frickin' hammer. Okay? And we'll go into crucial conversations because I think that's a great way, especially in business and talking politics and stuff. But in relationships, part of that understanding, to your point, was that logic of they're bringing everything from your relationship with them, their relationship with others that are in that moment. And that's how they got there and go, oh yeah, I guess I can really see. I guess I might react that same way or feel that same way. I don't, but I might if I had that experience. So.
Right. And I think that what you just summed up could be like the balm that we need to our political culture right now. Because if you think about it, like everything we're talking about with, the V for validation, I don't think it's a silver bullet or anything, but I really think it could help. Because if you think about it, people are feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant, which makes them struggle with trust. They don't feel safe. They don't feel respected. And then if it happens for a long time, now there's this patterns of resentment and neglect and emotional disconnection that's adding to everybody's fire. And it seems like in politics right now, in the U.S., for us, we care way more about being right than having a relationship with the other half of the country that disagrees with us.
I think our politics is a manifestation of our lives. And I think that way more in our private and our personal lives, we want to be right because I think we, as a society, feel distrust, not heard, unseen. And for me, I believe that, yes, I want to take that into politics, but unless I had practiced it in my daily life, in my personal relationships, in my business relationships, where I am building up my character and my strength to be brave in that, they ain't going to happen in politics.
Yeah, that makes sense. Don't start with politics to practice V.
No.
Start in your life.
Start in your life. It's like I say, if you don't practice it in the bedroom, you won't practice it in business. If you don't practice voicing, if you don't practice being seen, if I don't do it in private, I will never do it in public. And again, last time I checked, we elect people. This is who we are. So it's like, and I was having this great conversation with Preston yesterday, and we were like, this is, I came back from overseas, and everybody's like, yeah, this is America. And I kept wanting to go, no, it's not, but it is. And this is a representation of not all of us, but a good portion of us. And until that happens, until we can sit down and start doing that, until we're sitting down with husbands and wives and families and friends, I mean, I've had to do this last week and the week before, deal with this on a very personal level. But if I don't do that on one relationship, whether it be the relationship with myself or one relationship with someone that just kind of sends me sideways, if I'm not willing to do it, then where am I? It doesn't get easy. I mean, yeah, it gets easy in relationships where it don't mean anything. That's why I say, fuck fair, doing it scared, still doing it. And that's courageous. Like, practice this because that's when you have the most meaning. That's when you build something with somebody and you build something with yourself. So I don't know. I don't know that it's a big bomb or anything, but to me, it's really simple. I can't go, AA, you hear it all the time. And again, I know I'm not supposed to say AA, but whatever. You can't transmit something you haven't got. If I'm not willing to show this and to be this towards myself, I typically don't have it with others. And if I'm not willing to do it on a personal level, on a private level, when am I going to do that in public? You know? So, ladies, gentlemen, this is the V. Go out and validate. See if you've got the courage to validate someone you disagree with. Like, not just like, okay, this is what I want. All right, this is your assignment, and then I'll let y'all go. This is your assignment. So one morning, and for me, I got up early. I'm an early riser, and my husband, my ex, was in bed, and for some reason he was saying shit to me, and I know it was shit because of my reaction, of course, you know. Well, and I'm being sarcastic. It was probably being nice and lovely, but basically, I walk out of the bedroom. And you've heard me say, give grace, right? And I grab my crotch and go, I got your grace right here. And right then I was like, whoa, girl, wait a minute. Oh, trigger. You know, and I didn't say it loud enough for him to hear, but boy, I said it till I could hear. And I remember that feeling, I got your grace right here. And I was like, all right, we need to start our day over, girl. Because it was like 6 or 7, like, because I get up early. So this is your assignment. All right. Someone where you're like, I got your grace right here. You know, I got your grace right here. And it could be yourself, you know, someone that's like that. See if you can validate them. See if you can get and listen without responding and just gather the data. See, and then go through and understand, step into their logic and see if you can map their logic based on their history. And that history could be pre-you. It could be their family, it could be their business, it could be whatever. It could be societal norms. Okay? And then if you can just verbalize that and go through and go, okay, well, all right, let me see. How can I validate that? Well, you can be present. You can paraphrase. Oh, is this what you're saying? Okay. Read the emotion. Say it out loud. Oh, you're angry? You know, is that what I'm hearing? Oh, I see how you could feel that way based on some of these history and the triggers that I'm probably, the buttons that are pushed or whatever. And yeah, anybody in that spot might feel that way. And then can you get to, I'd probably feel the same. Doesn't say I feel the same way. I'd probably feel the same. I mean, test it out. And even if you're not willing to do it, pick somebody. Pick a situation. And then if you're not willing to do it, ask yourself why and what's at risk for you. All you're doing is letting them be who they already are anyway, and you're just stating it. You know? And again, if that's someone who's in an abusive relationship where they're, and there's something physically at risk for you or emotionally at risk for you, maybe that tells you a little bit about that situation. If it's not, then what about it is holding you back? Because whether you give it validation or not, that's the way it is. Right? Isn't that kind of it, Joe?
I think that's what acceptance is, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So we're almost done. We got one of these puppies, and then we're going to go on to some other fun stuff, and we're going to do some more shots. And so until next time, ladies, gentlemen, thank you, everybody in between. Tubbs.
Thanks for tuning in to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell her what topics you want to hear, and share this episode with someone who could use a pantry full of boldness in their life. Remember, life isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell. So show up, take action, and keep saying fear.